from Clemson, South Carolina. This is the Kos Sports Show. Hi everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Kos Sports Show. I am of course your host for the evening, Andrew Koster, and of course this week the second rankings from the College Football Playoff Committee came out, so we are going to be going over those, who is in and who is out. Plus, some major upsets this weekend happened in college football that really may have hurt the Big Ten's chances of making the college football playoff, and they might all but be done next week. We'll talk more about those as well. Plus, the ACC title seems to be set. How Clemson and Miami looked these past couple of weekends. And also, is Baker Mayfield running away with the Heisman? We'll talk about Oklahoma's big win over Oklahoma State. And also, don't miss my Week 11 preview as well as picks. Let's get to it. Now, of course, the playoff rankings, of course, just came out within the past couple hours here. And really not much change. No change at all in the top five. And I'm completely okay with that, honestly. Georgia deserves to be one again. I mean, Alabama really doesn't have a reason to jump them. I mean, they both won by 14 over 6-2 teams, and both played about the same. You know, some people say Alabama should be number one. No, I don't think so. You know, this is the first team that Alabama has beaten that is currently in the top 25 all year. I mean, don't get me wrong. They have a chance to do it next weekend against Mississippi State, but honestly, they really don't. Now, overall with these rankings, which I'm also going to go ahead and list out as well, is 1 Georgia, 2 Alabama, 3 Notre Dame, 4 Clemson, 5 Oklahoma, 6 TCU, 7 Miami, 8 Wisconsin, 9 Washington, and 10 Auburn. When I look at these rankings, the only thing I'm surprised about in the top 10 is TCU being ahead of Miami. Now, I get why TCU could be ahead of Miami because they have overall had a pretty very strong resume as well. But after Miami's big win last week over Virginia Tech, I'm more surprised just because of how dominant they look. I mean, don't get me wrong, TCU looked dominant too, but over a way less Texas team compared to what Miami has been beating a very good Virginia Tech team. It was more surprising, but it's like in the end, it's gonna play itself out. But for now, I guess I can understand why they are ahead, just because they beat Oklahoma State, they've beaten West Virginia. I mean, and if they beat Oklahoma, that will definitely solidify them as a contender in the college football playoff race. Don't get me wrong, though, it's still anyone's game, though, and at least for the top four. I mean, heck, all these teams could be gone. Heck, Notre Dame could lose to Miami this week. Clemson could lose to Florida State this week. Alabama could lose to Mississippi State this week. Georgia could lose to Auburn this week. There's so much that can still happen. But what I see, though, in this game, though, is it shows that the committee's still not overly impressed with Miami. They go back and look at more at their struggles against UNC and Florida State, who is, 3-5, and Georgia Tech, who is now 4-4. I think that's one thing that they're looking at. TCU really hasn't struggled against poor teams compared to Miami, and I think that's another reason why I could see them being put ahead, because they both have strong wins. Yes, Miami is undefeated, but you look at TCU, who they lost to a very good Iowa State team on the road by 7. I can totally see why they're at 6 instead of 7. I personally would put Miami at 6, but I get why they did. And also, by the way, Iowa jumped all the way up to 20. I was more surprised by that, but I get why. Because now they have 2 big wins over Iowa State and, Ohio State, which they upset this past weekend. Very dominant win. And you know who's really praising the Lord right now for this Iowa cracking the top 20? Wisconsin. And you know why? Because this weekend, Iowa goes on the road to Camp Randall to play Wisconsin, and that is huge for the Badgers. This will be the first time they played a team this season that will be currently ranked, as in when they played them. Yes, they beat Northwestern earlier this year, and Northwestern is 25 right now, but they were not like that at the beginning of the year. Overall, Wisconsin's schedule is still very, very soft, and it's going to be very interesting to see if they go undefeated. But this is a huge chance for us to finally see how good this Wisconsin team really is. They really haven't been tested. I mean, They've struggled against teams like Purdue, though, and Utah State and some other teams. So I'm not really sold on them yet. I'm definitely more sold on Miami, and I think they definitely deserve to jump them like they did. But this, like I said, Iowa jumping or cracking the top 20 though, is very huge for Wisconsin. They are praising the Lord right now. Now they're going to have a chance to see if they win this weekend. Of course, Iowa may be out of the top 25 if they lose this weekend, but this is still a huge deal. This is going to be, I think, a very good game. I'm very intrigued on this game. I think Wisconsin was actually favored by double digits. I think that's a little ridiculous considering what Iowa did last week against Ohio State. That's mind-boggling to me. But anyway, I'm not in Vegas. I don't bet the odds, so that's Vegas, you do you. But anyway, also, another thing that's been more surprising to me in these rankings is how low UCF is. I get it, they're group of 5. But they also have the same number of wins against the top 25 as Wisconsin. They actually have a better win because they beat number 22 Memphis earlier this year. Heck, they didn't just beat them, they killed them. And you're telling me that they shouldn't be in the top 15? That seems just a little bit ridiculous to me. You're telling me that Mississippi State should be ahead of UCF right now. No. Mississippi State's 2 losses, they've gone on the road to 2 top 10 teams but they got smacked. Mississippi State just struggled with UMass last weekend. UMass. They were losing a lot of this game against a 2-win UMass team. That is embarrassing. That is embarrassing for Mississippi State. And that's where I think the committee is getting a little bit harsh, is how they treat the group of 5 teams. Yet, I feel like they were way nicer last year to a Western Michigan team who won the MAC and made it to a New Year's Six. Well, I feel like they gave them way more respect than I feel like they're giving UCF. And UCF's honestly played a better schedule. Heck, they honestly would even have a better resume if they hadn't had to cancel their game against Georgia Tech thanks to Hurricane, Irma? But I think that's just a little bit unfair to UCF. I really don't like that. I think they should at least be top 15 at this point in the year. I mean, of course, they still have a couple games. I think they still have to play South Florida, and they just, I believe, beat Navy. I think they still have a couple of games to help solidify their resume. Of course, UCF's not in the top 25 anymore after their loss to Houston. But I think overall, though, that UCF should be in the top 15, like I said. But anyway, enough of that as well. But you know who, my team right now, there's usually that team when it comes to the top, to the playoff rankings at this time of the year, who's kind of sleeping under the radar that could come out of nowhere. And you know who I'm looking at right now? That's Auburn. And you know why? Because right now, they have a chance to beat Georgia twice. Because yes, Georgia's already clinched the SEC East, in case y'all didn't know, and Alabama. And in the regular season, I believe both of those games are at home at Jordan-Hare. I know Georgia is this weekend, and I'm very confident that that game against Alabama is too. So, if they win all those, this could potentially be the first 2-loss team that we see in the college football playoff. Because that is going to, I would honestly take them over an undefeated Wisconsin team based on who they beat. And the teams they lost to are both going to be in the top 25. One was to Clemson on the road in Death Valley, and then the other one was against LSU, who is currently 24, and I don't think might not lose a game for the rest of the year. I could be wrong on that. Don't get me wrong, but I think Auburn is right now just a team everyone needs to look at. They have a very good defense. The one thing, though, that can really kill their chances, though, is Jared Stidham. Jared Stidham's been very inconsistent this year. I got to watch him personally when he played Clemson. He was very rattled by Clemson's defense, but he's lucky right now. Not in the case of Georgia, but Alabama's defense has got some injuries, and that could really help them when they play Alabama. I just don't think they're going to have enough necessarily to beat Georgia, but don't get me wrong, that this is going to be a very good game this weekend, and it's going to come down to the quarterback play between Jake Fromm and Jared Stidham. But Auburn is that team that people need to keep an eye out for. A very good defense that will keep them in all their games. They've lost both of their games by 1 possession this year. So it's not like they've been getting blown out at all. Just the offense has been the only issue for them, the only thing that they need to worry about. But anyway, that's just all I really wanted to say on Auburn. And then also, when it comes to the Pac-12, they are not completely out of it, but they need help. I don't care who wins out for them. If they were to stay like this right now, no way they're getting it. And I think everyone knows that. They need Clemson, Notre Dame, Alabama, or Georgia. Probably 2 of those to lose. I mean, of course, Oklahoma and TCU are going to lose, but they might want one of them to lose twice. They need Miami to lose this weekend, potentially. They really want Wisconsin to lose as well. So right now, if I'm right now Washington, I am praying that there are upsets for the rest of the year, because Washington, they have 1 loss, But you look at who they played, I don't think they beat anybody in the top 25. Nobody who's currently in the top 25. Yes, this weekend, I believe they play, was it Stanford? But I think, if I remember, yeah, Stanford's not even in the top 25 anymore. That is that's also a big deal. But their two chances really this year are going to be probably against Washington State in the Apple Cup at the end of the year, and also USC, who is probably going to win the Pac-12 itself in the Pac-12 title game. And people keep saying that USC has a shot. I don't think so. And the reason why that is they also have no wins over current ranked top 25 teams. Now, credit, both of them were both wins over the top 25 that they had were the case last week when they beat Arizona and made them fall out. And, of course, Stanford, who's been in the top 25 a lot this year. But I think they're going to also look at how when they went to South Bend and got absolutely destroyed by Notre Dame. And then the loss to Wazoo is not bad. Don't get me wrong. Wazoo here is sitting at 19, but it's enough. I think that they're going to really need some 2007 stuff to happen in order for them to get in the playoff. And you know who's also I'll take this back. You know who could also maybe make a run? This is very small, going or no, not as close to as big as Auburn. Michigan State, and the reason is they play Ohio State this weekend, and they could potentially play an undefeated Wisconsin team in the Big Ten title game, and that could be huge. And if I'm the Big Ten, I am praying that Wisconsin wins all their games, and I hope they don't have the refs help favor Wisconsin because that's just ridiculous. But they need Wisconsin to win out, and they need them to win all their games big, because otherwise they will not get into the college football playoff. People keep saying, "Oh, they're undefeated in their Power 5 conference champion, they'll get in." Not necessarily. You look at their resume; they'll have wins against their three biggest wins of the year will be against the winner of Michigan State or Ohio State this weekend probably. And then followed by that, probably Iowa, and then Michigan. And Michigan this year has been poor. Yes, they have 2 losses, I believe, on the year. But Michigan has not been impressive at all. They barely beat Rutgers. Like, don't get me wrong, Rutgers is better than they have been in past years, but still. Come on. There's a reason why Michigan's not in the top 25. They've been very unimpressive this year, and I completely understand why. But anyway, that's just really all I wanted to say on these top 25 rankings. Like I said, not too much change. We're going to find out a lot more this upcoming weekend because there's 3 top 10 matchups. Of course, Georgia at Auburn, TCU at Oklahoma, and Notre Dame at Miami. This is going to really help us figure out a lot about this college football playoff scenario, and I'm very excited to see what happens this weekend. But anyway, enough of the college football playoff stuff. We're going to go on and talk about some of the games that happened this past weekend. And first off, we're going to talk about Ohio State getting destroyed by Iowa this past weekend and basically ending any chances they had at a playoff shot. Heck, I mean, they're still in the control their own destiny in the Big Ten East. Don't get me wrong, but this really hurt their playoff chances. I mean, basically, usually if you have 2 losses, once you lose that second game, you're almost out. Auburn right now is really the only exception right now having any chance, and that's just because they're going to have a bunch of huge wins at the end of the year that could help them out. But Ohio State was just, I was disappointed. You could tell it was a hangover this weekend. JT Barrett, 4 interceptions, including 1 on the first play on offense they had it for a pick 6. That is just terrible. I'm very disappointed. I'm surprised Urban Meyer did this. But I feel like what could probably been happening in this situation also, as they might have been overlooking the Michigan State next week which is going to now decide the Big Ten East probably this year. But that was disappointing. I was very disappointed, but I'm also very impressed with Iowa on both sides of the ball for that matter. Very good on offense. Was nearly 500 yards offensively, very balanced. And then also 487 yards actually of total offense. Very impressive and very balanced. But then Iowa also beat Ohio State in this game basically on every side in all aspects of this game. Offensively, defensively, you name it. They just, you could tell from the get-go that Iowa was playing inspired football. And also, by the way, did anyone see those uniforms that Iowa was wearing this weekend? Those were nice. I'm usually not too big of a fan on alternate jerseys. Like, there are some teams that can pull it off. And I like Iowa's classic look, but wow, those alternate uniforms that they wore this weekend were nice. Just had to comment on those. But anyway, Iowa showed that Iowa's been a good team this year. They've just been inconsistent. They've lost a lot of close games. I mean, of course, earlier this year they had a chance to beat Penn State, but lost on a last-second play. They beat, what was it? They lost to, I think, Northwestern in overtime. I forgot who else they lost to. But this Iowa team's has some good wins. They have a win over Iowa State in overtime, earlier this year in overtime. And, of course, they just beat Ohio State. It's going to be very interesting to see now what happens next upcoming week when they go up to Wisconsin. What was it? I honestly think that they're going to feel disrespected being this big of an underdog next week at Wisconsin. You know, you think like they should have shown that they deserve a little more respect. And people keep talking about how good Wisconsin is. We don't know how good Wisconsin is. They have played nobody. Their best win is over Northwestern, who's 25. Now, I'm not trying to bash Northwestern, but Iowa is a team that people really shouldn't underestimate. They could really spoil the party for the Big Ten. Like I said, Wisconsin loses this weekend, Big Ten's done. They're done. There's no debate on it. So, but this is going to be a very exciting game. Two teams I think honestly though that Iowa's going to be a little more balanced than Wisconsin. Wisconsin's defense, I'd say, is a little bit better, but Iowa's defense cannot be overlooked either. There is also a very solid defense. But at the end of the day, the main points I want to get on this is that Ohio State, its playoff chances are basically done. And please, people better not be sleeping on Iowa this upcoming weekend because they could get another big win. I'm not saying they're going to make any noise, but they're going to make some noise towards the end of the year. I mean, I think I'm very impressed the way they have played this past weekend, and I'm very excited to see how they'll play this weekend against Wisconsin. Very exciting to see two very good backs as well. Akram Wadley versus Jonathan Taylor. Very intrigued to see how this matchup will be in the backfield. Anyway, enough of that. There was also another upset in the Big Ten this weekend. What was it? Penn State losing to Michigan State. Now, of course, in case y'all didn't know, there was a 3.5-hour weather delay in this game in the second quarter, because of lightning, I believe, and all the fans were asked to clear the stadium. And I actually went back and saw the highlights of this game. There were not many fans after that rainstorm. So Penn State can try and blame the rain for this loss. They really can't because Michigan State had to deal with the same stuff. And also, they basically lost any home field advantage they had. That was not a home field advantage. You look at that stadium after that, once they resumed play, I don't think it was even half full. Like, come on. But I'm also very disappointed in Saquon Barkley. Yes, he scored 2 touchdowns last week, but in the past 2 weeks overall, though, he's been disappointing. Since the second half overall of last week, very disappointing. I was so high on him going midway through the year. I was excited on him from the start of the year, but in these big games these last couple weeks, he's just been very disappointing. He went from basically being Heisman frontrunner to not being his name off the list because he's still easily in the Heisman race, but he's definitely not the frontrunner anymore. And also, fun fact that I actually learned when I was doing some research here, James Franklin is now 0-10 against I believe, AP-ranked opponents on the road. 0-10. That's a little bit concerning if you're Penn State. That he hasn't been able to get a significant road win. But I will give James Franklin some credit, though. One of his players was running off the sideline after the loss. He went and grabbed him and told him to go shake the guy, Michigan State team's hand. That is a guy that I really respect for that. I've always respected James Franklin. He's a great coach overall still. I mean, I think he'll eventually figure out how to win some tough games on the road, but I mean, don't get me wrong, he had a tough road win earlier this year against Iowa. I mean, yes, it wasn't an AP-ranked win, but it's still a good win. I was just more disappointed in Penn State this week. I expected better from their offense. Their defense played very solid, I mean, against a good Michigan State team, but they just couldn't quite get it done. Of course, the last-second field goal was helped to get it done, but also 3 turnovers were another big thing that killed Penn State this week, and that really hurt them as well. I don't know exactly how much they or how many. I don't know exactly how many points Michigan State capitalized on or scored off those turnovers, but it's 3 turnovers in any game. If you lose the turnover battle, which I think they did 3-1, your chances of winning decrease exponentially, and we saw it here. It hurt them. But then going back to Michigan State, huge credit to Mark D'Antonio turning this program around. 3 or 4 win program last year, after of course the year before making it to the college football playoff, and now they're in control of their own destiny in the Big Ten East. And we saw what happened last time they went to Ohio State. They won. I wouldn't say that they don't have the chance to do it this weekend. It's going to be a very interesting game. It's sad that it doesn't really have playoff implications, but this is still going to be a very good game. There's a lot of good games this weekend overall. But at the end of the day, Penn State also out of the playoff race. Very disappointed the way they played these last couple of weeks. Just weren't quite able to put it away last week, and then just another bad loss this weekend against, or not bad loss. A loss, I feel like, a game I thought they should have won. And I don't think the weather stopping would have helped them all. It's just, I don't know. It's just like, I feel like maybe the Ohio State loss also could have hurt their confidence too. But don't take it too much away from this Michigan State team. A very good team, especially on defense. But anyway, enough of that as well. Enough overall with the Big Ten. Like I said, Wisconsin's their last hope of getting a team in the Big Ten or in the college football playoff. And they need them to win out in the rest of their games big, but enough of that. Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan State don't have a chance. But enough of that game. Let's go on and move on to the ACC. There was basically 2 division title games this weekend. We're going to start off first with Clemson going on the road to Raleigh and beating NC State by 7. And was it 38-31? Clemson's defense in the first half was very poor. They gave up 21 points. Their pass defense especially. I think Ryan Finley, quarterback of NC State, completed, I believe it's first 15 passes in a row. He didn't. That was very concerning. And to be fair to Clemson, they do have 2 of their best defenders or corners out right now, in Mark Fields and Marcus Edmond. They are getting healthy, so they will be good to go if they make the playoff. But you can see it now. Heck, they had Ray McCloud change his jersey number to 21 this weekend to play defense. That shows you right now how thin they are at corner, but they still managed to get it done. They turned it up in the second half. There was a lot. They forced NC State to a lot of 3-and-outs and didn't let them score a touchdown in the second half till 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Of course, they made it a little shaky at the end when they almost let them score again, but they made a lot of good plays when they made the big plays when they needed to, especially in the second half. I was very impressed with that. But you know what actually was in my opinion, the big change, or the big momentum swinger in this game? This might sound kind of crazy. Kelly Bryant's punt on a pooch kick on 4th down that went to the half-yard line. But to be fair, this is their quarterback punting this ball to the half-yard line, or the NC State's half-yard line, and giving them terrible field position. I don't know. It's just I feel like it just inspired their team, and you saw what happened after that. They went on a tear, and I was very impressed with Kelly Bryant. I mean, in the beginning of the game and overall in the first half, struggled at some times. Of course, had his on the first drive threw an interception, and this is the one thing going back to one thing I think he's struggled with all year, and that's pocket presence. And also miscommunication. If you go back to that play, it was just a miscommunication between him and Hunter Renfrow, because Renfrow saw the blitz, but I don't think Bryant could realize off his face that Renfrow was pulling up for that situation. But anyway, that really didn't hurt them too much in the end, because they did win the game. But Clemson's defense does need to do a better job at stopping the pass right now. But like I said, it's because they have some guys out on defense. It's gonna get better for them. They're gonna get better, but offensively, definitely one thing they need to get better at is hitting the big play. They missed a lot of big chances this past weekend on hitting the big play. Of course, they had some, of course Feaster's 89-yard touchdown run, but particularly in the passing game, there were some wide open receivers that Kelly Bryant underthrew, and I think he's gonna hopefully get those down, because we've seen him hit the big plays as well. It's just a little bit inconsistency, and it's also, I think, still going back to him being a first-year starter. It's stuff he's still learning. I mean, I think Kelly Bryant's still a very solid quarterback, but he's still got some stuff he's got to learn, and you can see it overall. But basically, Clemson is in the ACC Championship game now. Of course, they still have to beat Florida State this weekend, and that's going to be no easy test because Florida State is going to be playing everything. Is going to be giving them everything they have to try and make a bowl game. Heck, Florida State's going to be actually is going to be trying to schedule apparently Louisiana Monroe just so they can make it to a bowl game potentially. Because if they don't and they lose to Clemson this weekend, they're not going to a bowl game, and they're going to get Florida State's best shot anyway. This is a rivalry game. It's a big game, and I think that Florida State's going to be inspired, especially they finally won last week against Syracuse, which by 3, but still won. I mean, that's going to be a huge momentum booster for that team, who just seemed like the week before against Boston College just seemed like they didn't want to be there at all and didn't even show up to the game at all. So it's going to be very interesting. Clemson better be ready this week. It cannot overlook to the ACC Championship game, or even South Carolina for that matter, who's going to still be a tough matchup too. They need to play each game, or take each game at a time. But also going on to this, NC State fans and coaches really need to quit blaming the refs for this loss. I don't like to address fan bases and call fan bases trashy that often. NC State was definitely one of the worst fan bases ever, and here's why. After this loss this past weekend, they kept blaming the refs, which the refs made a couple bad calls on both sides, but I know what call they're more upset, or probably most upset about, and it's the illegal shift on the last drive they had where they got a huge catch on for first and goal. That call was a great call. And here's why. There's 2 guys that are literally standing up looking at the quarterback trying to talk to them and are not set. That is the definite and illegal shift includes not being set. And they weren't set. It's really it's right there. It's not that obvious. But then NC State fans went on to spit and throw stuff at the refs as they were leaving the stadium. That's terrible. Disgusting. And then NC State's coach blames the refs and says they were all for Clemson. Because there's some clear missed calls on Clemson. They had 2. And I went back and watched a lot of these. I'm not going to get into specifics, but if people want to ask me about it, I will more than certainly talk to you about it. And I will go pull up clips of it as well. And also the fact that he was so desperate to try and blame stuff. He's talked about a laptop on Clemson's sideline that wasn't even being used by the coaches. Heck, actually, Dabo made a funny joke about that today in this press conference, saying that it was for the towels because, in case you all didn't watch the game, Bradley Chubb kept stealing, what was her name? Kelly Bryant's towel, and the guy was like, "Oh, we need more towels because they kept stealing ours from Amazon," and that was kind of funny. But there was that laptop. There was nothing wrong with the laptop. It was being used by social media. It was not being used by the team at all, so it was perfectly legal what they were doing with it. It wasn't football team related. It was not used for the game. So NC State, so much respect lost for their fan base and coaches this past weekend. And also, Dave Dorian is also the same coach that also said that they achieved something last year when they lost to Clemson in overtime, that they achieved knocking out Wayne Gallman out of the game when they gave him a concussion. That is just disgusting. Disgusting. How can you live with yourself as that? I'm sorry for going on a rant here, but this is just ridiculous. And I really I don't like to go off on fan bases like this, but this is unacceptable. You throw stuff at the refs, you blame, and you literally you go that low to try and blame stuff on laptops and refs. You will not see that from Dabo Swinney, unless it's the most ridiculous calls potentially ever. And even then, I don't think he still would. Heck, when they lost to Syracuse, he didn't even blame it on the bad quarterback getting hurt. He blamed it on himself and not getting the team prepared. And that's what I feel like Dave Dorian should have done. Personally, I just no respect for him now. And I hope he never wins a ACC championship while he's at NC State. Heck, I hope his team just crashes and burns. I honestly would be okay with that because he is not a coach that is meant to be in college football. This is just because that what I've just seen from him these past 2 years have been disgusting. And the fan base as a whole, they don't deserve this kind of thing. They don't deserve this kind of success if you're going to be like that when you lose. Heck, when Clemson lost to Syracuse, geez, I would never want to go. When they lost to Pittsburgh last year, I didn't see people trying to go throw stuff at the refs. I mean, there were some bad calls on both sides of the ball in that game, but come on. Act like you've been there before. I mean, NC State, they've never been there before, don't get me wrong, but still. show some class. But anyway, that's enough of that. Fact of the matter is, Clemson is basically in the ACC title game, but they do need to beat Florida State this weekend. I think they will, but they cannot overlook them. And also the other side of it, the ACC Coastal, Miami with a very impressive win over Virginia Tech. And if you heard me on the show last week, I thought Virginia Tech was going to beat the brakes off of them. Wow, I really look like an idiot now. I really do. I mean, I just wasn't high on Miami coming into that game, but they showed me wrong. Particularly their defense. Forced, 4 turnovers in this game? Very impressive. But the thing that they still have some issues though. I'm not 100% bought on them yet. If they beat Notre Dame this weekend, I will take that back. But they have some issues on the offensive side of the ball. Rozier threw 3 interceptions in this game. And don't get me wrong, Virginia Tech's defense is a good defense. But come on. That is concerning. In my opinion, this game overall was very sloppy on both sides. I mean, yes, Miami did a good job hitting the home run plays, which really helped them in this game, but still. If you have 3 turnovers against Notre Dame, I don't think you will win. Because I guarantee Notre Dame is better than Virginia Tech. I will promise you that. And if they beat Notre Dame this weekend, I will be very impressed. But right now, I don't necessarily see it, but what was it? Miami just was overall, I don't know. There's just something about them that still I'm not sold on. I'm not trying to bash them. Because I like Mark Richt. He's a great coach. He's a great guy. And I'm impressed with what he's done to help turn around this Miami program. It's great to see them back almost. And I want to say almost just because if you look still at their overall work, it's still not the best. But it is definitely changed my mindset on this weekend. I was also very disappointed in Virginia Tech's offense, but like I said, going back, I give credit to Miami's defense. They've been also very good all year. It's the thing that's been the problem for Miami this year has more been their offense. And I mean, even though Homer coming in and replacing Mark Walton as starting running back he's been good. Don't get me wrong, he had a very good game this past weekend, but they still have some work. They still have some work to do offensively, and they need to definitely limit turnovers this weekend if they want to beat Notre Dame. But it's going to be a very good game. I'm very excited to see how Notre Dame's rush offense goes against that Miami defense, who's been one of the best in the country all year. But anyway, that's all I really wanted to also say on the ACC Coastal, or Division Championship game, basically. Well, which it basically was. Miami's basically, and I don't know who else they have to play in the ACC, but I think they need to, even if they lose twice, I think they're not in. I think they already clinched it basically overall, but I'm not 100% sure. So don't quote me on that. But anyway, that's really all I wanted to say about that game. But congratulations to Miami and Mark Richt. Like I said, I love Mark Richt. He's a great guy. Even though I grew up a diehard Georgia fan, gave him a bunch of crap growing there, he's still, the fact of the matter is, he's still overall a very solid coach. And has had plenty of success in the college football world, and we're seeing what it's going on with Miami. Anyway, enough with the ACC. We're going to move on now to the Big 12. And Oklahoma beating Oklahoma State in a shootout in Bedlam. And now, if you also go back to the show last week, I said this game was probably going to be in the 50-60 range as far as points go. I was right on that. I just picked the wrong team to win. And Baker Mayfield, he carried this offense again. He's carried this offense all year. He is right now the best player in the country. It's really not much more than that. Without him, this Oklahoma team is nowhere close to as good. And because we've seen their defense would not keep them in this many games. They would probably have 4 or 5 losses. They would have probably lost to Baylor. They would have probably lost to Kansas State. They might have even lost to Texas. I've been very impressed with Baker Mayfield though this year. Very, very impressed with Baker Mayfield. I wasn't the biggest fan of him coming in the year, more because of his DUI, or not DUI, it's more his public intoxication and arrest incident. It was a shame on him. I expected better from him, but that doesn't take away from how good he is playing this year. He is on a mission, and he was without a doubt the favorite right now to win the Heisman. It's his to lose. 598 passing yards this weekend, by the way. That's a school record at Oklahoma. And they've had some good quarterbacks come through there as well. Sam Bradford just named one a Heisman winner what was it? Even Landry Jones when he was there. That's another big name. Just to name a couple recently. Now, of course, this is also on their first-year coach, Lincoln Riley, and you've seen he's taking this offense to even bigger heights than last year. But the defense, though, like I said, is a huge concern for them. You cannot give up 52 points usually and expect to win. Thankfully, they have probably the best offense in the country right now, but still, that is not going to help you in the college football playoff. And heck, and like I said earlier, that could be a reason why they might be keeping them out of the college football playoff. Giving up 52 points is not okay. And usually, no, is it 9 times out of 10 you're going to lose a game if you give up 52 points. Usually, your team's not going to score more than 52. But they did. They won. I'm not denying that. I'm not trying to take much away, but it's a concern going forward. And they're playing a way better defense this weekend in TCU. And TCU's offense is gonna get back on track. They looked better last week. They scored 24 against a good Texas team last week. And yes, Oklahoma scored more. But TCU's got one of the best defenses in the country, easily the best in the Big 12. And I'm very excited to see this matchup. Can Baker Mayfield beat this TCU defense? Because they have been very good all year. It's going to be a very interesting matchup, to say the least. But as far as for Oklahoma State, they're out of the playoff chase. Simple as that. You have 2 losses now to TCU and Oklahoma. You could still maybe make the Big 12 title game, but probably not. If Oklahoma were to lose this weekend and they would have beat Iowa State, they'd still be in second because TCU holds the tiebreaker, or Oklahoma holds the tiebreaker. No matter who wins this weekend, it's still going to be Oklahoma TCU 1 and 2. So they basically they're still screwed as far as that goes. I honestly kind of want Iowa State to win, because then if Iowa State or Oklahoma loses, then Iowa State will hold the tiebreaker against the two, both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and be second. And that would be very interesting. But then also Oklahoma cannot also overlook West Virginia, because they still have them left to play. But if they win this weekend, they are almost, I think, assured a spot in the Big 12 title game, because they also only have, after this, if they beat TCU, they will have to play West Virginia, but they also have to play Kansas, and that's almost a guaranteed win. Heck, Baylor even beat Kansas. But you never know. This Oklahoma defense can make their games a lot more interesting than it should be. I mean, heck, we saw last time Oklahoma and their shaky Big 12 defense got into the college football playoff. They lost to Clemson pretty bad. And, it's a fact. There's just some stuff it's something that they're going to have to worry about this year. I mean, but I'm like I said, I'm excited for this weekend against TCU for them. But anyway, that's really all I wanted to say on the Big 12 overall. There's not much more to that. Of course, Iowa, yes, they lost to West Virginia. But West Virginia's been a good team. You look at who they've lost to. They've lost to Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, and TCU. And did they lose to another one? I can't remember off the top of my head. But West Virginia's been a good team all year. They deserve to honestly finally get one of those big wins. They've been that close, and Will Greer's been playing very well for them as well. And heck, they could still beat Oklahoma, like I said. Iowa State, they still have a chance though to win the Big 12, but I hope they win out, and TCU wins out, because that'd be cool to see that rematch in the Big 12 title game. Because I like TCU. I like Gary Patterson. He's a great coach, and it's good to see him turn his program around as well. But anyway, enough of that on the Big 12. We're going to go on now. I'm going to give you my top performances of Week 11, starting with offense. Of course, the obvious first choice, Baker Mayfield of Oklahoma. 24-36, 598 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, and their win over Oklahoma State in Bedlam. And then after that, Rashad Penny of San Diego State. Not to see his name coming back again. 20 carries, 274 yards, and 3 touchdowns in their win over, who did they beat? I don't know. I'll look that up later. I'll mark that down later if I'm talking. Or actually, you know what? Screw it. I will look it up real quick for y'all. It is who? San Jose State. So yeah, Rashad Penny, like I said, 20 carries, 274 yards, 3 touchdowns. Sadly, kind of dropped out of the Heisman race, but still cool. And then of course, Marquise Brown of OU. 9 receptions for 265 yards and 2 touchdowns, like I said, in their big win over Oklahoma State. And an honorable mention for this week, Ahmad Bradshaw of Army. He had over 200 yards. And Army won another game this year without completing a pass. I think that's 3 now. And Army's 7-2. Good for that program. I'm very glad to see them turning it around. This is the best season that I know they've had in a while. Of course, last year beat Navy for the first time in since 2001. Yeah, I'm glad to see this Army program turning it around. And then also Ronald Jones of USC against Arizona State last week. Glad to see USC finally getting back on track. I'm still not 100% on them just because of their inconsistency. They've had some inconsistency this year, but that's also because of injuries. But Ronald Jones had almost 200 yards and I believe 3 touchdowns. So good for him. Then defensively, of course, Cleveland Farrell of Clemson, 12 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 1 sack, and their big win on the road against NC State. Joshua Jackson of Iowa, 3 tackles, 3 interceptions, and their big win over Ohio State this past weekend. And Jaquan Johnson of Miami, 6 tackles and 1 interception, and he was all over the place too in this game against their big win over Virginia Tech. An honorable mention, we will just have one. It's Hakeem Bailey of West Virginia. And then now we're going ahead and move on from that. We're going to have to talk about the Heisman Watch here. But like I said earlier, it's right now it's kind of obvious right now what's going on here. It's Baker Mayfield's Heisman to lose. Right now, he clearly deserves it. I don't know his exact stats right now. He's only 5 interceptions on the year, and that's very impressive considering how much Oklahoma throws the ball. He's basically carried this team on offense. But it's really hard to just go against him. I mean, who else are you going to give it to? Barkley's fallen off these last couple of weeks. Bryce Love didn't play 2 weeks ago when he was hurt. And this past week, he didn't look that great in their loss to Washington State. Very disappointed in that, by the way. But, you know, it was just more disappointment. And then Khalil Tate's still in there. Of course, he's still, even though they lost last week to USC, he's still been playing very well. And Josh Adams as well. I don't think he had over 100 yards last week, but still a very overall solid game for him as well. Actually, while we're at it, I'm going to go ahead and pull up Baker Mayfield stats this year for 2017. Let's go ahead and pull this up. What was it? Oh my goodness, he has been having himself a year this year. He's completed for already over 3,000 passing yards this year, and 28 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. That is very good, and a quarterback rating of 201.6. That's the best of his career. This is definitely he's in all his career, he has never thrown more than 9 interceptions, and he's probably on track right now to throw fewest of his career. Now credit. He could throw some this weekend against a very good TCU defense. But like I said, this is his Heisman to lose. He needs to slip up big time at this point if he is going to lose it. In my opinion, he deserves it way more than Lamar Jackson did last year. It's like a clear, obvious no-brainer. People can try and say, oh, but what about Barkley and Love? The fact of the matter is, really, Baker Mayfield hasn't had a bad game. Even though they lost to Iowa State, he played very well. It was their defense that cost him that game. And like I said, that's why I'm only nervous about Oklahoma. But like I said, if Baker Mayfield doesn't slip up, easily deserves the Heisman. No way. I don't think anyone can catch up to him. If he were to slip up, though, that does reopen the door for Barkley and Bryce Love. But I would probably more give it to Bryce Love. Penn State's just more kind of falling off a little bit, but or Josh Adams or Khalil. I don't think Khalil Tate just because he missed the first couple of games, but Josh Adams could come through, especially if he has a big game against Miami this weekend. We could be talking about him again. You best believe that. Anyway, though, that's really all I wanted to talk about with the Heisman Watch. It's really not much more than that. They definitely, I think, deserve. I think Baker Mayfield though is still clearly the Heisman favorite. He deserves it. Anyway, enough of that. Then I'm gonna also go ahead and give you my top 4 as well. I meant to give this earlier, but I completely forgot about it. But my top 4, actually, we'll go with top 6 overall. It's going to be basically almost the exact same as the playoff rankings. 1 Georgia, 2 Alabama, 3 Notre Dame, 4 Clemson, 5 Oklahoma, and 6 Miami. And the reason I said Miami is, like I said earlier, they're undefeated, and they also had a very good win this past weekend against Virginia Tech. And now they're actually starting to show that they are the real deal. And I think they're honestly on par, and the reason I give them the head-to-head over TCU is because of the fact that they have are that undefeated. That because I think overall resume-wise they're almost even now, in my opinion. But anyway, I didn't want to say too much about that. It's there's because there's really nothing too important on that. It's just the same. Like I like to give my predictions, but right now there's really I think the committee is just doing a great job. They're doing a phenomenal job in my opinion. I give them kudos. They've actually been very impressed with them this year. But anyway, I love that. I'm going to go on and give you my Week 11 previews here. And there is 4 big games that I'm going to be talking about. The first one is Notre Dame at Miami this weekend. Catholics versus convicts. Oh, feels like we're in the 80s and 90s all over again. Actually, more 80s. I take that back. This is going to be good. One of the best running attacks in the game right now versus one of the best running defenses in the game in college football. This is going to be a huge game, but loser, like I said, loser is out of the college football playoff for sure. But I think the key difference in this game, though, is going to be the quarterback play. Because neither quarterback has looked great. Wimbush, he's a great runner, but we haven't seen him be able to throw the ball that well. I mean, he did decent against NC State a couple weeks ago. He did decent last week, too, against Wake Forest. But we need to see. I'm very curious to see how Mark Richt plans on defending this guy this week, or Wimbush this week. And I feel like definitely he's going to try and make them beat them with his arm. And that's completely fair. Wimbush hasn't shown that he's had the best arm. But then also Rozier, if you're Notre Dame, you want him to beat you, or you want him to make him try and beat you with his arm, just because, and make him force the tough throws, because we see has struggled with making them. He actually threw 3 picks last week, but this game's going to be very exciting. I think it's going to be going back to a few weeks ago. I would have said my Notre Dame would have blown this game open and completely destroyed Miami. Now I think it's going to be a very good game, actually, just based off of watching Miami last week. I mean, we'll see what happens, though. It's going to be very good. And then also, Georgia at Auburn, Deep South's oldest rivalry. I love this rivalry. I grew up part of it, just growing up a diehard Dog fan. It's always a good game. And it's a key, same key here as in the first game, is the quarterback play. 2 kind of like unproven quarterbacks, but Jake Fromm has definitely looked better than Jarrett Stidham. Don't get me wrong; he's definitely been more consistent, but hasn't really had to throw as much just because of how good Georgia's running game has been this year. Heck, they have 3 great backs in DeAndre Swift, Sony Michel, and Nick Chubb. But he did throw it 22 times last week, and he showed that he can throw the ball. He did a very solid job last year. They aren't going to try and make him throw it too much, but they will have to, because Auburn's defense is very solid. Definitely one of the best in the country, along with Georgia's. But I think Fromm has definitely been the better of the 2 quarterbacks, or better than Stidham this year. Stidham's been more consistent. We saw him when he played Clemson, what happened there. We saw him when he played LSU, not that great of games. But I think being at Jordan-Hare, this will definitely help Auburn. They haven't lost there this year. Both of their losses have been on the road. Jordan-Hare is a very tough place to play. I haven't personally been there, but I've had friends who say that have been there, and it gets very loud there. And it's going to be a good game. Remember, like I said, if Auburn wins out, don't be surprised if they make the playoff, because they'll have beaten Georgia twice, and they will have beaten Alabama. You cannot sleep on Auburn. As much as I hate saying it, you cannot sleep on Auburn. This team is a very solid team, and this is going to be a dogfight this weekend. There's no way that Georgia blows this team out. If Georgia wins this game, they will have earned it, and that's being straight up. And of course, now in the Big 12, another top 10 matchup, the last of the top 10s, but not the last one I'm going to talk about here. There's another one as well. TCU at Oklahoma. Of course, basically, whoever wins this game is going to have the clear edge in the Big 12, and also is going to be the Big 12's last hope of getting in the playoff, because the loser of this game will now have 2 losses. But I think here, this one, TCU is the best defense Oklahoma has played all year. It's good. I mean, of course, this is in Norman, but of course, Oklahoma lost in Norman earlier this year to Iowa State. So this is going to be a good game, though. In my opinion, the key here is Kenny Hill. We know Baker Mayfield is going to play well. The question is how much TCU can hold him. They can hold him a good amount, but Kenny Hill has to step up this game. He, in the last couple of weeks, hasn't been great. I don't think he threw a passing touchdown last week. Yeah, I know he did. Heck, they didn't score an offensive touchdown the week before. Gary Patterson needs to get this passing game going for TCU for them to have to win this game, in my opinion. It's going to be a good game, but because their defense is going to keep them in this game regardless. But it's how their offense plays, and they have a really good chance because this Oklahoma defense this year. I know they're in the ranks. Their defense ranks in the hundreds as far as like total defense. They have not been impressive at all this year, and I think that TCU is definitely going to have a good shot to beat Oklahoma. If Oklahoma wins this game, it's going to be because of Baker Mayfield. Like he's been a big reason they've won almost all their games. So it's good. Like he's carried their offense. Like a lot of new names, of course, last year. Or they lost Mixon, they lost Pirine, and they lost D.D. Westbrook. He's come in with some new names and just completely done way better than I thought he would. But anyway, also there's a huge matchup in the Big Ten this weekend, like I was talking about earlier. Iowa at Wisconsin. The key in this one, in my opinion, is how well Alex Hornibrook plays for Wisconsin, because you know that Iowa is going to be keying in on Jonathan Taylor and Wisconsin's running attack, because Wisconsin loves to run the ball. The question is can Hornibrook win this game with his arm? He might have to, because Jonathan Taylor, he looked better last week. He looked very healthy, and Wisconsin looked very good last week against Indiana. But it's still this is the best team I think they've played this year, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it goes for stopping this very balanced Iowa offense as well. Wisconsin's defenses overall this year have been very solid, but in my opinion, the key in this game is how well can their passing game go for this one. And of course, it is in Camp Randall, another very tough place to play, but Iowa's going to be bringing it. I think they're feeling disrespected. I don't know if they've seen the line, but yes, they are double-digit underdogs in this game. And I feel like after last week that shouldn't have been the case, but Wisconsin better be ready to go. This is their chance to show everyone if they're the real deal. If they don't win it here, the Big Ten's done. They're not going to make the playoff unless so much stuff happens in front of them. But even then, I don't think so. But like I said, this is huge. Wisconsin, you wanted the chance to show everyone you can beat everybody, or you're the real deal. Show us this weekend. Show us. Until then, I'm still not on your hype train. Show us this weekend, and then maybe I'll think differently. But anyway, enough of the preview. Let's get on to the picks. Now we got some good ones this weekend, of course. There is a lot. How many do I have in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I think 12 over here. But anyway, let's go on. Here, the first one I'm going to make, it's not really as big of a game, but Duke at Army. This is a good one just because Duke is favored in this game, but Army is 7-2. I'm going with the Black Knights in this one. I love the way Army has played this year. Well, heck, one of their 2 losses has only been to Ohio State, and I think they win this game without completing a pass as well. Amar Bradshaw's been doing a great job of leading this team. I like the Black Knights in this one by a touchdown or 2. And then going on also, Toledo at Ohio. And the reason I'm bringing up this game is the Toledo only has 1 loss, and that was to Miami. Ohio has 2 losses, and I don't remember who they were to, but this is a big game in the MAC. This is to see basically who is going to be the front runner when it comes to the MAC championship. I'm going with the Rockets in this one just because they've looked good all year. Even in the Miami game, they gave Miami a good run for their money. Miami didn't pull away until later in that game. I like the Rockets in this one by a touchdown or 2 as well. And then also, so we'll start off in the Pac-12 for the Power 5 games. Washington State at Utah. This is a game people might not be talking about, but Washington State looked a lot better this past weekend with a big win against Stanford, who I thought Stanford was going to win that game. I think they bounced back overall, and their defense is looking a lot better. Even though it is in Utah, which is a very tough place to play, I like the Cougars in this one by a touchdown or 2, but it will be a good game. But Wazoo's playing a lot better than they were a couple weeks ago. And of course, after this, Iowa at Wisconsin. I talked about this earlier. This one was actually a tough one for me to pick. I keep giving a lot of crap saying a lot of stuff about Wisconsin, but I've gone back and forth in this one. I picked Wisconsin, I picked Iowa, but at the end of the day, I'm going to stick with the Hawkeyes in this one. I think they get it done in Camp Randall by a field goal. Very, very close game, but I think the Hawkeyes end any chance that the Big Ten had at getting into playoff. Hawkeyes by a field goal. Then, of course, Florida State at Clemson. This one basically is, if Florida State is playing for nothing but bragging rights at this point, if they win this. They would love to spoil Clemson's season, but I do love the Tigers in this one. They're gonna get a dogfight in this game. I don't think they even win. They win by 2 scores, but it's gonna be a close game. Clemson does get this one done though in Death Valley. I think overall they've just been the better team this year. Oklahoma State at Iowa State. This is also going to be a good game. It's basically just if Iowa State wins this one, and Oklahoma loses, they'll be second in the Big 12. I think they bounce back this weekend, and I like the Cyclones in this one by a touchdown or 2. Their defense has also been very good this year. I think they hold Mason Rudolph to a very low stat game, but yes, like I said, Cyclones by a touchdown. Washington at Stanford. This was originally I thought was going to decide the Pac-12 North, but no. Stanford lost to Washington State, so basically this is to keep any chances that the Pac-12 has at winning or making it into the playoff. I think Washington has overall still played very well this year despite their weak schedule. I think they hold Bryce Love to under 150 yards. I think they give up some yards. Their defense isn't the best, but it's still been solid. But I do like the Huskies in this one. Browning and company are going to get it done on offense. Huskies win this one by a touchdown or 2. Then Michigan State at Ohio State. This will decide, of course, the Big Ten East. I wanted to pick originally Michigan State in this game, but I don't think Urban Meyer is going to lose 2 in a row as Ohio State's head coach. I don't think he's yet to. I like the Buckeyes in this one by, I wouldn't say a lot. I think it's by a touchdown or 2 because Michigan State's defense is going to keep them in this game. But like I said, Ohio State by a touchdown or 2. Alabama at Mississippi State. This is a big game. This is Alabama's biggest test so far this year on the road to Mississippi State. And of course, Mississippi State has been inconsistent, like I've been talking about. That's the thing is the thing with them. They've gone on the road to Georgia and Auburn, gotten throttled. But of course, they beat LSU at home. And this game is in Starkville. I think this one is going to be a very close game, but I think the Tide just get it done just enough by a touchdown or field goal, but a very, very good game. And Mississippi State can easily win this game. But like I said, the Tide get this one done. Very, very close, though. And then, of course, we'll move on to these top 10 matchups this weekend. Georgia at Auburn. Of course, Deep South's oldest rivalry, like I said earlier. And I think the quarterback play, the quarterback play is going to be the key difference in this game. And I think that Jake Fromm is going to outperform Jared Stidham in this game for sure. It isn't Jordan Hare, but I do like the Dogs in this one by a touchdown too. Very good game though overall. TCU at Oklahoma. Like I said, this is basically decides who takes control of the Big 12. And I think that TCU's defense makes enough plays in this one. And just because of how poor Oklahoma's defense has been playing themselves, I think Kenny Hill has a very solid game for the Horned Frogs. I like them to get it done in Norman by a touchdown. A very, very good game. Definitely not in the 50s and 60s this week just because of TCU's defense. Oklahoma will get its points though. They might get in the 30s, maybe 20s. Or I highly doubt though the 20s, but I do like the Horned Frogs in this one by a touchdown. And then finally, Notre Dame at Miami. Catholics versus convicts. I am definitely higher on Miami. I think this game is definitely going to be a lot closer than I thought it would be 2 weeks ago. But I still do like the Irish in this one. I think their defense is playing too well. They're going to force Rozier into a lot of mistakes, and their running game will still have its some success against Miami. I like the Irish in this one by a touchdown or 2. Now, of course, I'll go on to my upset alert for this weekend, and that is Virginia Tech at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is coming off of a loss to Virginia. And actually, it was a 2-game losing streak? Maybe even it might be actually a 3-game losing streak. But, no, actually, I take it back. 2-game losing streak. But Georgia Tech, it seems like Paul Johnson has overall had Virginia Tech's number since he's been at Georgia Tech. And they beat them last year in Blacksburg. The game this year is in Atlanta. I'm not saying the Georgia Tech will win this game, but it's going to be very, very close. Hokies cannot overlook this one. Yes, they're probably done with the ACC title host, but if Miami were to slip up, they need to win the rest of their games to win or to potentially make it to the ACC Championship game. I don't think it will happen, but look out for this one. This could be easily an upset this weekend. Alright guys, well that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Kos Sports Show. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to give it a like, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. I do plan, like I said, on getting more player highlights done. I have just been very busy with school in these past couple of weeks. It's just civil engineering is a hard major. I wish I could do sports journalism because I feel like it would definitely be easier. But anyway, enough of that. There's going to be, like I said, a lot of big games this weekend. I am very excited to watch them. Heck, I will be at Clemson, Florida State, and I will be also watching some of the other games during the day. And then when we come back here for next Tuesday, these rankings are going to be very, very interesting because so much is going to have unfolded, and we're going to be finding out some very interesting stuff on what the committee sees this year. I mean, we've seen overall kind of what they're thinking. Head-to-head is important. Who you lose to, not as much important. Strength of schedule, very important. Your resume is overall still the most important thing. But like I said, guys, have a good weekend. Enjoy watching your football. Be safe, and I will see you next week on the Kos Sports Show.